But I want to walk you through my weekly prep flow for home, right? Just as an example, so you can kind of wrap your head around the execution side, because again, it's really all about properly planning your prep, so that way you can just get in the kitchen and cook. So just like everybody who's listening to this podcast and who enjoys cooking at home, I have a day job that keeps me really busy. The fact that I'm a chef means I have a couple of tips and tricks and hacks to get me through this. But at the end of the day, I'm working a 10, sometimes 12-hour shift, recently more like 10-hour shifts, which is nice. And I get home, I don't have a whole lot of time to prep and cook a meal, but I don't want to eat out either constantly. So what I do is on my weekends, I prep ahead. And your standard meal during the week, at least my standard meal for me, is going to consist of three things. And you guys know what those are. What are they? That's right, it's a protein, a starch, and a vegetable. Now, your starch can actually be left out on certain nights. So there's some nights where I do just a protein and a salad. It's a little bit healthier, right? And then your vegetable could be, you could double up and do a veg, or you can double up and do a salad. Okay, so you can do like salad veg, you can do protein, salad, vegetable, starch if you want to go crazy. But you got to start thinking about what you're going to cook ahead. So I start my week with start my sort of weekend prep, usually with a Costco run, because you can buy stuff in bulk. And, instead of buying, a couple, things of this, a couple things of that, I'll buy a bag of new potatoes, a bag of sweet potatoes. That's where I get my rice. That's where I get, a couple of whole chickens, a couple of tri-tips. And then I go home and I start prepping, usually on a prep day. So sometimes it'll be like a Saturday or Friday. I'll grab something that's easy to cook, right? So I'll do like a roasted chicken, or maybe I'll even grab like a rotisserie chicken from Costco, something that's easy, so that way I can really actually focus on my prep. Because if you're trying to focus on like executing a dinner while prepping for your upcoming week, you're gonna get locked up. It's gonna be kind of difficult to do. Okay, so this is when you put in your earbuds, right? You listen to some good music, or maybe you listen to some older episodes of the best culinary podcast in the universe, and you get some inspiration going, but you're kind of just zoning out. You're having fun, you're in your zone, and you're working and you're prepping, okay? And you want to start thinking of your prep flow as far as cross-contamination, cleanup, and the utilization of your cooking vehicles, okay? So, for example, if I'm going to be prepping a bunch of proteins, I'll usually do that first, okay? And I'll prep in the order of the least amount of cooking necessary to not kill me. So, if I'm going to prep tri-tip, if I need to, right, I'm going to prep the tri-tip first because it's beef. I'm going to cook that to mid-rare. If I'm going to prep fish, I'll prep fish before the beef, but that's kind of interchangeable. Be careful, though, because the fish can transfer in your cutting boards. You want to always make sure you're washing in between, but especially with the fish, right, with the flavor and stuff. And then I'll leave my poultry or my chicken to last. So a common prep workflow for me would be something along the lines of this. I get a side of salmon from Costco, I take off the skin, I trim up the belly, I freeze the belly so I can make raviolis or salmon cakes from that later down the road where I'm feeling kind of ambitious. I take the salmon, I slice it up into individual portions. I have a video on portioning salmon at stellarculinary.com/CKS. That's our culinary knife skills unit. And I'll usually just put those in a Ziploc bag, maybe a little bit of salt on them to kind of dry brine, which isn't fully necessary. You can also wet brine them, 5% for 30 to 60 minutes. That's going to help to hold the albumin in. Okay, but that's all optional stuff. Just, salmon is pretty straightforward. And I'll stick that in the fridge. Salmon is a great... and you guys were, Jacob, I thought you hated salmon. I do hate salmon, but it's healthy, and my girls like it, my wife likes it, my daughter likes it, and you throw some lemon juice on it, it's not that bad, right? You need a little side salad. So I'll portion up that salmon, stick it in the fridge, and that's a really quick weeknight pickup. You can get all fancy with your salmon, but just a sear on one side or a pan roast. I have a little griddle that I love, right, that I'll sear my salmon on. It takes like 10 minutes tops, start to finish. So salmon, rice, salad, boom, you're done. Maybe a couple lemon wedges on the side. So my salmon's portioned. Now I'll take my tri-tip. I usually buy the 2-pack from Costco. And, I eat steak and stuff too, but, tri-tip's a good universal meat. So I'll take one tri-tip, I'll slice it up, and I'll do the alkaline marinade, which we have been discussing in previous episodes. And I have a video coming up on this. This will be on the main YouTube channel. But it's our basic, a little bit of baking soda, a little bit of salt, and then some umami ingredients, right? So your soy sauce, maybe a little dash of oyster sauce, and a little bit of cornstarch to hold all together. I'll take that sliced meat. This could easily be pork loin. It could easily be chicken. But this is going to be a stir fry later on in the week, okay? So I'll put that in a Ziploc bag. That goes into the fridge as well. Then I take the second tri-tip, put it in a Ziploc bag, dump in my favorite marinade. You guys know I love teriyaki. It can be anything you want. You can do a dry rub. You can. I got some Meat Church barbecue rubs for Christmas from the crew at the hotel, which was very nice of them. And I've been really liking the Meat Church a lot. So maybe you want to go more sort of like dry rub, so you can hit it with a little bit of your seasoning, pop it in your Ziploc bag, pop that in your fridge. Okay, now you got another marinade piece of meat ready to go. Then I'll take my whole chickens. If I got it, sometimes I buy thighs, sometimes I buy breasts, depends on what I'm doing. Okay, I'll break down my chickens, take the carcass. If I'm feeling ambitious, I'll roast them to make stock. A lot of times I don't, though. A lot of times I just throw them in the stock pot, and then I'll make my stock with it, right? In the pressure cooker. So it's 45 minutes, 60 minutes, start to finish. I'm not throwing in a bunch of mirepoix. I'm not throwing in a bunch of other ingredients, right? Because what I'm doing is I'm just trying to quickly, just in my workflow, boom, break down the chicken. The carcass goes in the pressure cooker, bring it up to pressure, make my stock. Now I have something that I can't buy from the store, which I do buy stock, by the way. I do buy the boxed stock because there are times where you want to use it. You don't want to use your good stuff. The actual chicken stock that I'm making in this pressure cooker is just a really quick extraction of the chicken flavor plus the gelatin, right? And then you save that for later. So later on in the week, maybe you want to make a pan reduction sauce. Maybe you want to use it for braising something. That's all good things. When you need a little splash of chicken stock or broth in, say, like a stir fry that we're going to do, right? I use the box stuff for that because it's not a massive flavor component. It's not a really important part of the flavor structure. I just need a little bit of liquid there to kind of get all the juices to mingle into play nicely. From there, you can do any number of things to your chicken pieces. You could cross-cut the breast and turn that into another stir-fry dish if you like. You could just save it as is, pan roast it. But now would be a good time to either drop it in a brine or to do a dry brine. So now our meat prep is done. I'm sitting there rocking out, listening to some music, and the earbuds are in, and just kind of having a good time. Now you're going to break everything down, you're going to clean it up, and it's time to prep, if you're going to prep your vegetables at all. So for me, I eat a lot of salads. Now, I really like these salad kits at Costco, and yeah, you would think that Costco has an advertising deal with me, but they don't. I just like shouting out the people that I like to make your lives easier. So Costco has this Mediterranean salad kit, which is pretty solid. They also have a superfoods with kale. That's solid. And that's great because it's prepped. It's ready to go. You throw it in your vegetable drawer. You're in a pinch, right? You're coming home rushed from work. And as long as you got a protein in a salad, you're good. You're good to go. You're golden, right? Also, too, for leftovers, here's a little leftover trick that's kind of on the healthier side is Mission Tortillas does a great carb balance, like whole wheat tortilla. That's solid. The macros on it are great. It's like, depending on the size, it's anywhere from 80 to 100 calories, per tortilla. And your leftover meat from the night before, whether it's chicken or whatever, quick saute, throw that in a mixing bowl with some salad mix and maybe just a little touch of like shredded cheese, or I use like some non-fat sour cream. Stir that around, some fresh cut vegetables. You drop that. I actually just make like 2 large, like soft shell tacos with it, basically, and it's a really super fast, super healthy, weeknight dinner. But I digress. So if you're gonna to prep your vegetables, when cooking in a professional environment, or when cooking in general, right? It's almost always do we apply a two-step cooking process, because you're always trying to find that perfect balance, that perfect meeting point on the perfection graph of interior texture and exterior doneness, right? You usually on the outside, you want it to be brown or crispy or all the above, right? Because that gives you some great flavor. So steamed green beans are okay, right? When you char them in a hot wok, they're way better, right? But if you just take raw green beans and you char them in a hot wok, or you throw them in a saute pan to brown them, by the time they're brown on the outside, they're gonna be a really tough, crunchy interior. So what we do is we want to blanch and we want to par cook, and this goes for our new potatoes, this goes for sweet potatoes, this goes for everything. So a couple of tricks. Your green vegetables, I love, one of my favorite kitchen devices or tools is a basket steamer. And you can get like the bamboo baskets that you put over a wok, and you can feel really cool about yourself, because ultimately they look cool, right? But they're pretty inconvenient. So I have like the tabletop electric version, double stack basket. Just search electric steamer on Amazon. It's a little round thing, has 2 levels to it. I think it costs like $50, if not less. And you can steam quite a bit of vegetables in here. And what's great about steaming vegetables for blanching, right? So when you blanch, you could either blanch in boiling salted water, as we've discussed in previous podcast episodes, and I have some video content on, or you can steam. Now, I much prefer to steam, especially at home, because when you blanch directly in the water, right, the water gets murky and kind of starts having different flavors pretty quick. Whereas a steamer, the water's underneath, and you can just kind of load stuff in the basket and go. Also, the steam is more efficient at heat transfer because you don't have the product hitting the water and dropping the temp and then that product recovery, right? So a really good example of this is hard-boiled eggs, right? If you have the perfect time and temperature for hard-boiled eggs at home, and you normally make 6 eggs, right? You bring your pot to a boil, you drop in your eggs in the shell, you do whatever, you set your timer, some people kill the heat, doesn't really matter, right? And every single time you hard boil those 6 eggs, they come out perfect. Now what happens when you go to hard boil 12? Well, you're working in a completely different environment, because now you're dropping 12 cold eggs instead of 6 cold eggs into the same pot, and the temperature drops, it recovers slower or whatever, so it's going to throw off your timing, so your eggs aren't going to be perfect anymore. So the timing is way more consistent with blanching your vegetables. So you can load up your steamer basket after basket. If they're green vegetables, you can have a little bowl of ice sitting there and blanch them, or ice them to stop the cooking process. Something like a starch, like a new potato, you just can kind of let cool on the counter off to the side. It's not a big deal. They're not really going to overcook. So I go through this process where I have some vegetables, and I'm steaming them, I'm cooling them, and then I'll just bag them. I just bag them in gallon Ziploc bags. And then for my salad prep, I'll just bust out my chef's knife, cut up some cucumbers, cut up maybe a red onion or 2, julienne, a little bit of a bell pepper, whatever you like on your salad, right? But your salad prep is a good time to practice your knife skills, and I'm bagging those as well. Also, if you guys have watched my just my simple roasted red potato video, it's a real straightforward technique where I blanch them in boiling water first, and then cut them in and then let them cool. We cut them in half, toss them in a little bit of oil, and then put them face down on or cut side down on a sheeted heat tray and roast them. Great. They take about 20 to 25 minutes to roast at that point. So that's another good thing. So I'll blanch the new potatoes in the steamer until they're tender. And so that's kind of my prep. That's my workflow. And some of you might be thinking, well, God, that sounds like a lot of work. But it really isn't. And adjust to your own liking, right? Again, couple of proteins that are easy to execute that you can actually cook, right? Couple of maybe salad mixes that you like, and then a starch or 2 that you can pull into, okay? And this is to get your weeknight meals going. And then for your, lunches, you can bring leftovers. So I always cook a little bit extra. I can cook for 10. I can cook for 100. I can't cook for 2. If you put a gun to my head and said, hey, chef, I need you to cook a meal for 2 with 0 leftovers, I'd be like, just fucking pull the trigger. It's over, Charlie. So with this prep, now it's time to look at execution. So let's kind of review here. What do I have? Well, I have some salmon, right, that I'm not super excited about, but I know it's a quick pickup and the girls will like it, so that's in the fridge kind of hanging out. I got some salad mixes. I got some prepped vegetables. I also have a couple of steamed vegetables that I blanched. I got my rice, which I can always fire up in the Zojirushi rice cooker, and I have some potatoes, some new potatoes that I can roast at any time just by cutting in half, tossing in oil. Now, before we move on to the execution step, another really good trick for my healthy eaters out there is if you eat a lot of sweet potatoes and yams. One of the things that my favorite way to do this is I take a sweet potato or yam, whatever you want, poke a couple holes in it, wrap it in some foil, and roast it in your oven, usually for about an hour and a half, depending on the size. But 425, depending on your oven's temperature and how it flows, right? Just kind of watch it. You all know your own ovens. You got to be responsible for your own ovens, right? But for me, 425, an hour and a half, what I'm looking for is when I squeeze that foil on these sweet potatoes, I want it to feel pretty soft, right? Like not completely mush, but like pretty soft, because that's going to get the sweet potato nice and creamy. Then, still in the foil, it goes straight into the fridge. The pickup on this is super simple. I've talked about my flat top griddle that I have. It's a little $13 thing. That's an electric griddle that I bought from Goodwill, right? And I cook a ton of stuff on that. That's where I reheat my meat when I'm making my little soft shell tacos. For the pickup on the sweet potatoes on any given night, so you need a starch, that's healthy. Take your griddle, get it nice and hot, maybe about 350 degrees on the dial, and you take the sweet potato and you just press it directly into this griddle, right? Maybe hit it with some nonstick spray, or you could rub it with some olive oil if you're not counting your fat macros, right? Press that sweet potato right down into the griddle, press it flat, and then let it just sit there and char and hang out. Season with some salt and pepper, and then flip it. By the time both sides are brown, and this is with the skin on, right? By the time both sides are brown, the skin is kind of like caramelized and like stuck to the potato itself. It's heated all the way through, and you got like this kind of crispy exterior, creamy interior, and it's delicious. It's one of my favorite ways to eat sweet potato. And again, super easy. I'm in my kitchen prepping on the weekend, right? Just rolling potatoes up in foil, pop them in my oven that's preheated, set my timer for an hour and a half, grab them, throw them in the fridge, don't even think about them, right? Now it's Wednesday night. I need a quick, healthy starch to go along with my roasted chicken, right? I'm going to just press this down to a flat top. If you don't have a flat top, just use a non-stick pan. If you try and use like a stainless steel pan, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to stick. Press that down. Now, also, too, you could pick them up in your oven as well. So get your oven nice and hot. Spray a sheet pan with some nonstick spray. Flatten these potatoes on your cutting board and then put them onto a sheet tray. Roast until they're crispy. How long? Until they're done. Okay. There's no magic time. There's only what you're looking for. So they're already cooked, right? So we already cooked them we got the internal texture how we want it to be during the prep phase. Okay, so on the pickup, we're just looking at getting the exterior texture that we want. If you like kind of boring steamed potatoes, well, then you don't need to do anything. You just got to reheat it. Right? Me, I like a little bit of crispiness, a little bit of caramelization on the outside, so I pick them up on the flat top or roast them in the oven. All right, you guys tracking so far? Okay. So, and we'll go through some of your comments here in a second to tie this up. So now I want you to kind of imagine you're hanging out with me on a Monday night or just Tuesday night in my kitchen. I come home from work. I say, let's do a stir fry, right? Let's do a beef stir fry with some green beans and some steamed rice. Right? Pretty complete meal, kind of healthy. Well, I have my sliced tri-tip already sitting in the fridge, right? I got my blanched green beans. So now maybe all I have to do is mince up a little bit of garlic, maybe cut a fresh onion, and I'm good to go. Wok gets hot, I saute my onion, pass it onto the plate, and I have a whole video on this I'm getting ready to post for you guys. And then stir fry the meat, Go through that stir frying process. The rice is already cooking in the rice cooker. Great thing about the Zojirushi or any high-end rice cooker, but I have the Zojirushi, is it has that extended hold. So if you're really in a rush for the execution side, I can make that rice in the morning before I go to work, and it'll hold perfectly warm when I get home. So now all I have to do is focus on the actual stir fry and the pickup. So that's a real simple thing, right? Just boom, some green beans, stir-fried, meat goes in. After you remove the green beans, stir-fry that meat. Green beans go back in with the meat, hit it with a little bit of soy, a little bit of chicken stock, and you're good to go. And I'm going to walk you through this process in a future video. Another night, come home, right? It's salmon night. So salmon, roasted potatoes, and let's do a side salad. Okay, so I get my flat top nice and hot. I get my oven warm. Now, you got to think to yourself, well, of course, these potatoes are going to take the longest time to cook. So I'm going to turn my oven on first before I do anything. So I got to preheat that oven to 350 or 375. I'm going to throw my sheet pan in there so that gets hot with the oven. And then while the oven's preheating, I'm going to take my potatoes, I'm going to cut them in half. You would be amazed how many people reverse this step, right? They start cutting their potatoes and then they turn on their oven. When we're sitting here just hanging out, drinking coffee together, a little dribble there, it seems like such an obvious thing. When you're in your kitchen actually cooking, it's not that obvious to people. So you always want to kind of think ahead and say, well, what's going to take the longest? And well, I got to preheat my oven. So you want to start that stuff first. I can't tell you how many people start reducing their sauce while they're roasting their meat. It's too late. It's too late. You're already in the weeds, right? So turn on the oven. Then I start cutting my potatoes in half. Give them a quick toss. I got my griddle preheating. I pull the sheet tray out, throw the potatoes on it, flip them over so they are cut side down. Why? Because I'm a true pro. That's why. And that's, they come out way better that way. Cut side down. They go in the oven. I set my timer for 20 minutes. I start searing the salmon. Sear. Put the salmon on the plate. Oh no, my salmon is done before my potatoes. Oh my God, it's a panic. My salmon's going to be cold. My potatoes are going to be hot. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do what any chef would do. I'm going to pull the potatoes out. I'm going to season. I'm going to check. I'm going to let my salmon hang out. And I'm not going to turn my oven off, right? When it comes time to serve, hey, girls, dinner time, boom. Salmon goes in my hot oven, on the plate and everything, right? In the hot oven. Let it sit there for about a minute and a half just to warm up that exterior. And I played it. So now we have a great dinner of roasted potatoes, salmon, and a side salad. So you can see that by kind of taking this approach as far as prepping out your ingredients, blanching, kind of doing all that prep work, what we call mise en place, ahead of time, on a Wednesday night, on a Thursday night, you should be stepping in your kitchen and you should be executing. Now, here's the thing that I can't do for you. I can't stand there in your kitchen, unfortunately, and tell you where you're messing up your execution or where you kind of went wrong on your prep. But here is a mental trick that I'm going to give you right now. If you're in your kitchen on a Thursday night and you're flailing with prep to get something done, well, then that is your feedback that you're not prepped out, right? You're in what we call the weeds. Okay, you're not prepped. So I want you to stop and just kind of take note for a second of what that is. What is that thing? What is that item that's putting you in the weeds, right? Is it you're trying to steam your green beans on the fly? Is it you're trying to parboil your potatoes on the fly? What is it that's putting you in the weeds? And then I want you to stop and think about it, right? Just don't be a bull in a china shop just kind of powering through everything, right? If something puts you in the weeds, you got to stop and think about it. And that's the execution side. It is kind of mentally preparing yourself or mentally evaluating why something did or did not work. And when you get good enough at this thought process, then you can actually imagine yourself from start to finish cooking a dish in your kitchen and executing that dish and see these sort of nightmarish scenarios. I mean, on Thursday nights it's going to be not nightmarish, but how many of you, raise your hands, how many of you have had a horrible experience executing something, say on Thanksgiving or Christmas for 12 people, because you missed a step or you didn't think ahead or you planned poorly, right? So what you need to do is when you get in your kitchen and you feel that confinement of time, you need to ask yourself, why is that? Did I take on too much? Am I not properly prepped? And of course, this is all stuff universal from a professional perspective as well. So if you're a professional cook listening to this, same thing. You're hopping on the hotline at 5 o'clock at night, dinner service starts, you're scrambling around, you're prepping everything last minute. Where did you mess up? Okay, why aren't you prepped? Because when it comes time to start cooking, if you're scrambling to get your prep in place, you're going to be screwed, right? You want to focus specifically on execution when the time comes. When the time comes to cook, you want to focus on cooking, all right? And when you get more comfortable with it, you can do what I do, which is sometimes I'll start roasting meats while I'm slicing stuff. And I'm kind of juggling things in the kitchen. But if you're new to this, if you feel like you're struggling with execution, then I would plan ahead as much as possible. Now, proteins, as far as cooking ahead, it is possible to do this. Braised meats work the best because you can store your braised meats in the liquid, so you can reheat them in that liquid, and you're not going to lose a whole lot. When you cook proteins ahead, you have what's called warmed over flavors, and this is why when you go and you get a steak at a restaurant, you bring it home the next day, you reheat it in your microwave, it just doesn't taste the same. Kind of has that and that's regardless of you overcooking it in your microwave. It's just, it has sort of that kind of stale, almost like waxy flavor to it. That's actually oxidation of the proteins, which happens when you cook proteins and then expose it to oxygen after it cools, and the actual technical term is warmed over flavor. So that's why a lot of people really like sous vide, because sous vide, you could actually cook something ahead in a bag and hold it cold, and then retherm it, where you're just basically heating the core back up. And this whole time, you're not breaking the seal on this bag. So you're not exposing it to oxygen. So it makes the execution a lot easier. With that said, on a weeknight in my home, I almost never use sous vide, because you got to set up the pot, you got to set up the circulator, it's a whole thing. And I just find myself using sous vide less and less at home. I never really used it much in the first place in my home kitchen. In fact, the thing that I use my sous vide for the most is to defrost things. You come home, you're kind of in a rush. Oh shit, I forgot to pull that thing out of the fridge, right? So I'm going to set up a pot. I'm going to set my immersion circulator to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Which is just a little bit above a warm room temperature. Drop in whatever frozen. In about 10 to 15 minutes, it'll be perfectly thawed without sort of that weird partial cooking thing that happens if you try and do the defrost cycle on your microwave. Now, once you get down this prep flow, right? On a semi-weekly basis, you're going to start getting into a rhythm, and you're going to start kind of finding your sweet spot and what you like, and you're going to almost start creating your own menu. And now you want to start looking at having some revolving items. So you're not cooking the same thing every single week, but maybe you got 8 to 10 revolving items that you're really good at. And you realize hey, I can prep my lasagna ahead of time and then bake it night of, right? I can blanch these veggies. I really like broccoli. I really like green beans. I can stir fry. I can saute. I really like these meats. These are the marinades that I like. So you start getting in this prep flow. You start figuring out what your family likes.